Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Chodesh Tov and Chanukah Sameach. This is wonderful. I love seeing everybody here. I love hearing all the music, all the song, all the joy. I want to talk a little bit today about the confluence of these three moments within our calendar. We have Shabbat Miketz. That's the portion that we're going to read today. It is in the middle of the Joseph story. We have Chanukah and we have Rosh Chodesh. And all three of them we are celebrating, we're commemorating today. And to some degree, there's a lot of differences between them. But what we're going to see today is there's actually a through line that connects all three of these together. Let's talk first about Chanukah. In the Talmud, the conversation on Chanukah begins with a very famous and somewhat enigmatic question, right? My Chanukah. What is Chanukah? And the reason it's a little strange is because everybody then who was reading this work of the Talmud knew exactly what Chanukah was. So what were they asking? They weren't actually asking, right, exactly, like, what is the basics of Chanukah? I think they were asking a deeper question. And so they start to tell the story that we know. And the story, interestingly enough, begins with Kishenichnasu Yevanim lehechal Tim'u kol hashmanim, right? When the ancient Greeks entered into the sanctuary, they defiled all of the oil in the temple. That starts the story that we then know of Chanukah, of the rededication of the temple. But what's interesting is the story starts in this moment of destruction. And in this moment of darkness and tragedy. I don't think we can fully comprehend, although in today's day and age, we're getting closer to being able to comprehend an event that is so dramatic that it shakes the very foundation of who we are as a Jewish people. And yet that's what happened at Chanukah. The temple, the place, the focal point of all of Jewish life, Jewish tradition, Jewish worship was destroyed and defiled. And that's the place where our story of Chanukah begins. It begins with this moment of destruction and desecration, not with the miracle. Let's now flip ahead to our Parsha that we're going to read today, Miketz. Miketz starts on page 250, and it says, Vayihi Miketz shnatayim yamim, ufaro cholem. It was after 2 years that Pharaoh dreamed a dream. Well, let's think about this for a moment. What was happening during those 2 years that this moment begins after? Where was Joseph? In jail. Joseph was in jail. Joseph was literally at the bottom, the darkest point, right? For those who are Broadway inclined, you hear the song. This is the moment, right, where Joseph is singing, "Close every door to me." Right? Hide all the light from me. It's this moment of despair. It's this moment of absolute darkness where our story begins today. And what's interesting is I think it helps teach a little bit of a lesson. I'm going to add Rosh Chodesh into it as well, just to have it on our minds. Rosh Chodesh, the new month, is part of our monthly cycle. How do we know that the new month is here? How do we know that it's the new month? What do we look for? The new moon. Not the full moon when it's the brightest, but the smallest little sliver of moon when it's actually the darkest. So even our monthly cycle, Rosh Chodesh, begins in this moment of darkness, and then we add light to it. So we have all of these things kind of going on. All of these stories are beginning in a moment of darkness. So let's go back to Miketz, right? Miketz begins in this place of darkness, and Pharaoh dreams. And the dreams are a new opportunity, a new opening. And it starts very subtly. Like the beginning of this parsha is almost doesn't make a big deal out of it. It says, right, in chapter 41, you can look at verse 14, if you happen to be there. Thereupon, Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was rushed up from the dungeon. It's just a matter of fact. For 2 years, nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, everything changes. And we think about it, often that's how light sort of works. It seems to slowly, you almost can't perceive it, and then all of a sudden, it's there. Hanukkah is actually the same pattern, if we think about it. The Hasmoneans reclaimed the temple after all those years of oppression. They find that single little cruse of oil, and then that one possibility, that one small flicker brings with it the full light of the potential. I want to not only look at the light, but I want to look at how Joseph and the Maccabees and the Hasmoneans responded to that light and to the darkness. Joseph is not freed because he forced the world open. He was freed, actually, the rabbis say, because he remained true to that inner sense of light within himself, even in the darkness of the pit. When he stands actually before Pharaoh, he says, it's not me, right? It's God that is going to answer Pharaoh's welfare. His light is actually based on humility. It's based on integrity. It's based on that connection that he had to God that for him was unbreakable and unshakable, even in that dark moment. The Maccabees actually come at it from a different perspective. They actually come at it from a place of courage and agency. They come at it from a willingness to act. They went out and, at the risk of their lives, fought for those things that they believed in. And I would argue that we see in Joseph and the Maccabees two very interesting forms of redemptive light. One shines from patience and faith, and the other shines from action and strength. And Miketz and Chanukah remind us today that both are critical to our survival as a people. Hillel, in his famous argument with Shammai in this section of Talmud, says when we have a choice between expanding our light or diminishing our light, the choice is clear. We always add. We start with one candle and we add each day, we increase that light. Joseph actually embodies this too, if we think about it. From the low point, he starts to build, he starts to add, he starts to increase the light, and then he has a choice later on in our story of whether to let that light be hidden when he now is in this position of power. Is he going to go back to that darkness of the family dynamic, or is he going to find a way through it? And he does. He finds his way through. In both of these stories, the surface seems like a descent. But in fact, it's a story of ascent. It's a story of coming up. And then we reach our world today, and we look at our world today. Many Jews around the globe are carrying fear and grief and uncertainty. We've watched this just this last week. Attacks on our communities all over the world. We've seen the rise of anti-Semitism in places that we once thought were safe. We continue to feel and watch Israel in pain. Families shaken, lives threatened. There's a constant hum of anxiety. And to speak of light now is not easy, but it is faithful to our tradition. Our ancestors walked into the desecrated temple. They surveyed the broken walls, the defiled oil. They saw what was true. They didn't hide from it. They didn't believe it wasn't there, but they lit anyway. This is the core, the spiritual core of Hanukkah. Not optimism or denial, choice. The choice to light. The choice to hope. The choice to believe that the divine flame inside the Jewish people cannot be extinguished. Miketz and Hanukkah invite us to see the darkness and to see it differently. Not as the end of a story, but actually as the middle. Not as a failure, but as the place actually where transformation can begin. Joseph's light emerges only after years of constriction. The Maccabees discover the oil after everything sacred seems lost. Our tradition insists that the world's shadows do not erase God's presence, and they do not erase our capacity to bring light into this world. And so we pray that the lights of Hanukkah strengthen every Jew who feels fear. We pray that Joseph's resilience, the Hasmonean's courage, and Hillel's confidence to increase light resides inside of us. And may the candles that we light tonight and tomorrow shine above and below, inside and out, until the world feels whole again. Shabbat Shalom.